Hello there and welcome to a new build guide for Age of Wonders 4. Today I got another Reclaimer's Hero Wall build for you, featuring the Reaver culture, because I figured after what I have experienced with the feudal culture, I needed to repeat that with the Reavers. The thing is about the Reclaimer trait is that you get binding essence for destroying cities and pillaging, and all those things are very Reaver-like, so I came up with that build. It is really nuts, and at some point you will take over the game without having any deeper drawbacks out of that. Currently, I think that the item forge and the heroes are still a little bit overpowered, and this is one build to abuse that. Keep that in mind. It is really, how to put it, a little bit more on the metagame and mechanics abusing side. But that being said, it's extremely powerful and it's fun. It has been playtested on Brutal. This play was the horrible situation that I almost felt like this build sucks, until I realized that I had to fight back a gold infestation spawner here and another one down here, and I succeeded at doing that, even though I was constantly being pillaged by stacks of tier 5 and tier 4 units, and I won. That's just a picture of what we can do with the selection of tomes and traits here. So let's get started. We got Overwhelm Tactics, Sneaky, and Elusive. This combo is really good for the Reavers and for heroes in general. Overwhelm Tactics works really nice on heroes as it increases your critical hit chance. It's really hard to get critical hit chance on heroes without equipment, and that's one of the very few ways to get it. Just make sure that for this build, it's working best if you feature heroes that exclusively share the race with each other. Sneaky is pretty obvious. We are really good at distracting units, and extra flanking damage is just juicy. And I like Elusive as it gives you just a little bit of lower damage. You can swap in Hardy. Adaptability doesn't work on heroes, so it's not as interesting for this build. So, we went here for Reclaimers, obviously, to have access to the item forge, and I went here for Fabled Hunters. The main idea here is to get more loot out of things and get an extra ranged unit and get extra strong ranged and skirmisher units. You could exchange that with Adept Settlers or whatever scratches your itch. I think a spellcaster trait that makes your combat magic cheaper would also be a really good one. This one is really adaptable. The Reclaimers one is what we're after. Now, let's move over to the tomes section. So, we got here, as the very first one to pick up, Cryomancy. Cryomancy is massive for this build, several reasons. First up, we get weapon enchantments, making your units, your heroes way more powerful. We get hard CC in form of Ice Coffin, and the White Witch, allowing your armies, even without your heroes, to easier subdue enemies, so there's a high synergy with the Reavers per se. And the Frost Blades and Frost Arrows enchantments make all of your combat summons a lot more powerful, and also your racial units really love that. Also, Blizzard is one badass map spell. It's really powerful, as it lowers the enemy's status resistance quite tremendously as well. One other highlight of this tome is the School of Cryomancy, enabling you to churn out nice amounts of knowledge reliably. Really good stuff. The second one to pick up is Roots. The combination here is that we want to pick up sustainability and heal and damage at the same time. Here we have the same combination of poison arrows and blades. We can apply that to our heroes as well, making for some really good hard-hitting heroes, especially when you use multi-action weapons. And we gain access to the Herbalist, which allows us to build conduits and research provinces as we need to. Really powerful stuff. The real highlight here is the Vine Prison, enabling you to just spill out distraction on the battlefield like crazy. This spell is amazing, especially with hero wall tactics, as it enables you to just put another turn between you and the enemy to summon new stuff, heal up your units, stall one part of the enemy army. There's just so much goodness that you can do with that spell that it's just very, very versatile and synergistic with that build. Also, the immobilization, you can use that for your subduing strategies as well. And healing roots is one really good last shot. If everybody else had to act and somebody still needs that healing, there you go. Very powerful tome 1, tier 1 tomes, especially the synergy between roots and cryomancy is big, since you have a lot of hot CC and you really do notice that. Now, tier 2, we head on over to fertility. There, at this point, you're really, really hard to kill. At this point, I was able to just kill off tier 5 stacks just with my heroes alone, with some losses here and there. Mostly because we have access to Revitalize, which is a massive spell. Every one of your heroes can have that. Every one of my heroes has that. And it allows you to just churn out massive amounts of regeneration. So you will always heal a big chunk after each and every turn, and you have a huge status effect cleansing field as well. The other spells in here aren't bad either. Animate Flora allows you to get some battlefield summons going out of your mana pool. I always like that. Nymphs are just amazing supporters. They go really well hand in hand with your overseers, as they can also seduce people, so you can really good recruit enemy army units with this build, and the rest of that is just economy play. Also, mind you that this build has an ability to counter enemy terraforming attempts, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty unique trait of that one. I want to point that out. And Bountiful Fields, well, it is a steroid for your cities and a bit for your armies. Can be useful, but it's more like a fringe case for me. The second pick here is Tome of Mayhem. Tad bit anti-intuitive for a hero build, but Mark of Misfortune triggers on every base attack. The only downside here, it is a battle magic skill, but if you pick resistance and a few according other skills, I'll show you these later, you can easily apply that to each and every one of your heroes with pretty much no downsides whatsoever. And this allows your heroes to turn into debuffing machines. Also, lots of your summons also turn into debuffing machines. Also, lots of your own units have a good use for that. It's really powerful, especially since your heroes can adapt into that really easily as well. Infectious Insanity and Curse of Misfortune are really, really powerful battlefield spells, make good use of them, and So Confusion is a pretty powerful siege project as it deals a lot of fortification damage and just spreads some chaos on the battlefield. And the Gremlins, if you can afford them, they're really cool and can fill up your ranks if you need some fodder to toss between the enemy. So your build is rather complete-ish at that point already when you pick up this tome here, the Tome of Transmutation. That's the finishing spot. After that, feel free to freestyle. The major sales point here, and that is something I'm deeply appreciating the comment section for, is the Transmutation Circle. I have slept over the fact that this thing can replicate any magic material in the game existing. For a hero-centric build, this tome is practically a must-have, and I'm really sad that I derped on this the last time I made a hero ball build, so big thanks to the comment section at that point. This is really massive, as you can after this just select what you want, and since we rock a lot of Materium, counting as a mine means that you can get at least 10 mana out of that thing via Arcane Artisans, so it's not even something that will cost you any progress whatsoever. So the other stuff here in this tome comes in handy though as well. The Transmuters are really good late game units, offering an AoE stun, which is again very synergistic with the Reaver's ability to subdue enemies. Shift bolts are not that much damaging, but very, very good in the utility department. And Steel Skin is applicable to your heroes again, so I really like that one. And Adaptive Armor is good for your frontliners and your summons. And Melt Armor, really good battlefield nuke. Tad bit costy, but the effects are really good. And Transmute Resources is really good too. If you have enough mana, like for example here I have way more mana than I want to spend, this spell can be really good to be a steroid for your cities. Also, don't sleep on Adaptive Armor on your warfare heroes. Really, really good stuff. My personal path down the road here would After that, be Tome of the Dreadnought. After all, we're playing Reavers, and there's just too much goodness in there to ignore. There's Pinning Barrage and Mana Core. Alone, these are really, really good. Warding Metals can make your shielders much better, but that's a bit more of a fringe case. But Ironclads and Great Bombards help you taking down cities really, really well. And the artillerist skill comes in handy for all of your warfare heroes as well. There's a lot of marking in this book, and that's why I'm picking it up. You can, though, and that's what I want to emphasize here, really freestyle into other things. Cycles, for example, is another amazing pick that I personally see, maybe even as a much better pick than the Dreadnought, especially if you are willing to opt into Withering Decay. All of your heroes need a really high amount of battle magic, but I will explain to you later why this is not a problem at all. But its base attacks inflict decaying. That means all your ranged units, bows, swords, all of it inflict decaying. And that makes your fighters really, really nasty. Of course, you can apply that to all of your parts or to parts of your army as well, but this is really powerful on hero builds. I was surprised about that. And since we play a lot around with pocket armies and stuff like summoning, Parting Gifts is a powerhouse of a spell as well, since we are already regenerating like crazy. This goes into that venue even more, so good book to take over the game with without any problems. And in the tier 4 area, well, like I said, it's really up to you. There's just so many things that you can't pick up at that point. The build is at this spot completed. You will take over the game already way earlier, and I think we can safely head on over to the other parts of the video. So quickly, I want to go over your army roster. You won't be using much of that since you're playing a hero ball, but all hero balls I recommend to have a army stack at your disposal if anybody will attack you. So your army ball might look something like that. Pick up a couple of mage locks for a backline because these guys hit like a truck. Pick up a couple of overseers because they can just heal up people quite well. And pick up mage lock cannons, transmuters, white witches. You will only build an army to support your heroes. Therefore, you don't need any frontline in your banners. You can totally replace any frontline with supporters or mage lock cannons or whatever. The basic idea is that this here is your army, and the rest is just there to be thrown in the way if the AI decides to just have an endless stream of units that you just cannot beat in one go. But that's the idea behind that. So in your roster, you want to go for quality instead of quantity. You don't need those low tier units. The tier 2s are as low as you want to go, and ideally try to have as many high tier units as possible. The mage lock cannons are much better than the mage locks in general, and this build is really good at just picking up the best of the best and just toss out of the window whatever you don't need. It's really cool, and that's why I deem it a little bit too powerful. At the hero skilling side, that's really important here as well, and I see that as a military part as well. I want to go over the build that I rock for the heroes here. So, every hero, every single one, without any exception, runs Mark Target, because in the Reaver's book, that is more damage. You want to have Restore, Revitalize, so you have tons of regeneration effects available for every single hero, and Focused Aggression is also a must-have for every hero. If you run a Wizard King, which I do, and I highly recommend for this build, it is not automatically on him. After you have these, you can go for either into the warfare tree, pump up their damage to inflict more, or you go into battle magic and you skill it up like follows. You go for resistance 1, that is never a bad pick. Everybody can use that. And after that, you have to go for, where is it? Lightning Evoker. We need another battle magic skill to bridge the gap. This is a little bit of a thing that you have to pick, but hear me out. Spell ain't bad. It can crit. It can hit critical, and therefore it's a high range thing. You will use it more often than you might think, even on your frontline heroes. And after that, you can just pick up resistance or whatever, but you have enough mastery to pick up Mark of Misfortune. And as you see here, the Resistance 3 is already an expert hero skill, so you get to the point where you can pick up Withering Projectiles as well. But we are truly after the Weaver skill. If you want to metagame and if you want to make it almost impossible to lose, try to have that on each and every one of your heroes and ignore your combat skills before you have that, because it re-enables you to just cast all your summons again. And with the signature skills, go for summons and support spells mostly, and you will win the fights quite easily. Mass Rejuvenation is a real highlight, as is Restoration. This thing here, by the way, if one of your heroes dies and you put that on his body, he will be alive after the combat as well. It's not a temporary resurrection, it's a real resurrection, and that's why this spell is one that I highly recommend to pick up as quick as possible for any one of your heroes. Basically, the priority list is don't skip on any summon, they are that good, just pick them up whenever you can, then pick up support skills, and then pick up the rest. That's that. Okay, that's the hero build. Let's talk about the item forge items. So for starters, really powerful, I mentioned that in the last hero ball already, Spawn Hatchling. Really cool to have that on pretty much every single hero of yours, since it's dirty cheap and it's massive utility even into the later stages of the game. Also, Silent Heroes heal wands. You can have a 30-point heal once per battle. Yeah, it's just a singular use, but for the Reavers, this can make all the difference. And another thing that I personally see as a must-have for this build are focus crystals. Out of one simple reason, the moment you have these, you can forge on every single one of your weapons Inflict Marked, which is just a powerhouse for the Reavers, because that means whenever a attack lands, 10% more damage. And lower evasion rate means also that your ranged heroes can hit like a truck too. The other materials there are, well, they're all good in their own way, but I feel like focus crystals are that one material that you really want to get as soon as you have the transmutation tome available. Now, the rest I'll leave up to your own fantasy and imagination, because you don't need much more above these items, and of course try to rush tier 4 weapons as fast as possible after you have the utility items down to your own liking. They make all the difference after that. Now, strategy part. You want to plot down cities as fast as possible. Again, here I planted down Isintur and Karatov as the very first things I did in this game. Then I wanted to conquer, because that's the next thing you do. You would go for infestations, low tier infestations, low tier wonders for more binding essence, and of course you clear out all the monsters out there, because we are running Fabled Hunters, therefore we get a lot of material out of that as well. You can, after that, if you don't have any wonders available, conquer a city-state or two. And my personal recommendation is, if you don't have to, because you have enough room to found another city, don't integrate them, rather vassalize them and let them rebuild, and then attack them again for the sake of the binding essence. But the returns aren't that good. If you want to farm them, there's really only 10 binding essence of that. So, in a nutshell, you are better off with destroying cities or fighting against Empire armies. But, well, warfare is one thing you should only do after you have a backup army or you are darn confident about your hero ball. But I strongly recommend, in an AI warfare situation that you want to start, have an army at your backhand. You will have a bit of a slow start at points, like I did here. I really felt like I was losing the game when you have a lot of infestation action going, but no matter how bad the game goes, the moment you have like a couple of level 12 plus heroes, and this is the army that should clear out all the things, don't waste your XP on any other units. The moment you have that, it's pretty much, you turn pretty much unstoppable, and this build always ends up with that point where you just need to add a banner of tier 3 to tier 5 units on top of that, and you are unstoppable. Therefore, play it slow early on, focus on the cities, and try to funnel as much experience as you can onto your heroes. It also pays off to just slap a conquering move on wonders that you don't even can claim, because you will always end up getting binding essence. And the wonderful part about that build is it is dirty rotten open-ended, because there are so many equipment slots where you can forge high tier gear that you will be at level 20 with that hero ball way before you are finished with your gear, and you might turn out to be bored because it turns out to be easy. But well, I warned you at the beginning of the video, and I hope you will enjoy this one. It's a different variation of the hero ball. It utilizes regeneration a lot, and regeneration is a real powerhouse of a mechanic, and we have so plentiful access to that with hero skills like Master Rejuvenation, but also with our innate abilities. Just keep in mind that you need to plan ahead when you're fighting. Alright, so I don't have much more to say about that build. It is very, very straightforward in what it does. The only real big downsides I found were that in the early game you will have to do a lot of micromanaging, because auto-resolving is now a breeze. But before that, I wasn't auto-resolving too well, especially if the enemy stacks were high quality. So you will have to play a lot manually, but on the bright side, you will have a lot of fun with this build at the same time, because your heroes are super powerful, especially when you hit the point where you get the marks of misfortune and the withering attacks. You will really notice how devastating your attacks are. And you have lots of regeneration. The Materium branch gives you a lot of access to defensive traits. You should invest some points also into physical resistance if you need to. The build path, the skill path that I've shown you is leaning very heavily into magical resistance, so your heroes are all over the board hard to kill. I love this build. It's just too strong for the AI, and so far as it turns out to be quite boring after a while. But at the same time, you can challenge yourself and try to beat the game just with these guys or something like that. One last thing before I head out. I did overbuy heroes heavily, and I do recommend this for this strategy. As you see, I have 6 of 3 heroes, and they turn out to be more costly, each and every one. They even cost you Imperium at some point, but these costs, they are worth it, because if you can stem the costs, go for it. The earlier you have all 6 heroes together under one banner, the earlier they can level out and turn into powerful, crazy things. And with this build, you should not limit yourself to the amount of cities. Very important point, else otherwise your build might suck a bit. Now then, I hope you will enjoy this. Feel free to leave me your comments down below. Leave me any ideas, recommendations, whatever you have on your mind, what kind of builds you want to see, etc., etc. I really love to hear from you guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Leave a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and check out Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee down there in the description box. They are the top-notch ways to support this channel, and a big, big thanks to everybody supporting the channel already, and a big, big thanks to you watching this video, even after these pesky ad rolls of mine. I really appreciate having you around. See you next time.